Working in fast food chains isn't really anyone's dream job. Working the night shift as a girl where sketchy individuals often show up doesn't make the task better. The slow and weary movement of time had me praying that no customer would enter for the last remaining 5 minutes before closing. I observed as Keith polished the tables and allowed myself to be lulled to relaxation as Jason's sweet voice reverberated from the kitchen, while Martha, our manager, had hid herself away in her office to finish the day's remaining duties. The sound of approaching footsteps snapped me away from reading the kiddie meal activity sheet, only for my eyes to meet an angelic face of a man. A smile so warm made me smile as well that it took a while before I could utter a welcome and ask for his order. His ocean eyes scanned the top menu while biting his lower lip, and the sight alone made me consider loving the night shift. His attention returned to me, still sporting that smile. But what he said next made my stomach drop. "I'd like the jumbo burger, please. But instead of the usual beef, I'd like your meat instead." He said those words in such a friendly manner, as if it was the most normal thing in the world, while I couldn't even breathe. I waited for a "ha ha, just kidding," but it never came. "Hello?" he asked as he waved a hand right in front of me, trying to snap me out of shock. "Ah, sorry. You close in 5 minutes, right? That's not enough time to cook your meat. I personally love the buttocks, meatiest part for me." He chuckled as he sent a wink my way. My tongue felt non-existent as fear took over my system. The ringing in my ears managed to muffle his voice and the horror that left his mouth. "Okay, so I guess I'll just have the large fries and large Coke, please. Thank you so much." His last request was said with such a polite tone that I felt like my mind was ready to lose it. I watched as he took the table near the door right next to where Keith was cleaning. I felt cursed, like I was hexed to stand in that spot forever, with only the nightmare to keep me company. Keith's running form was enough to shake me out of my trance and allowed me to finally say the word, "What?" as he pulled me into the kitchen. Jason gave us a questioning look, but before he could even inquire, Keith spat out words that made the horror even worse. "That man out there showed me a cut on top of his finger that had sliced through the skin, and before I could even offer a band-aid, he deliberately pulled that skin back with his teeth, pulled it off and chewed it as he kept smiling at me." I felt every tension in Keith's body as he paced back and forth, trying not to heave. Jason turned ghostly white at that, and we saw how he struggled to process the situation when I recounted what that man said to me. A 911 call was made by Martha when everything was explained to her. Jason sat in front of the locked door of the office, holding a knife, just in case the man decided to come after us, while Keith held my hand the whole time as the tremors started to wreck my body. The police arrived after a short time, but upon inspection, the man was no longer in the premises. Statements were taken, and even the authorities couldn't hide the disgust that got etched in their faces as our story got unfolded. Sleep never came to me that night, and I quit the very next day. Walking the streets had become something so difficult now, as I had developed a fear of strangers smiling. Whatever happened that night clearly ruined me. He was never found, and I pray every day that he wouldn't find me. I worked the night shift at a small fast food restaurant 5 nights a week. The food joint is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I just happen to be the unlucky one who has to work the drive-thru from midnight until 8 in the morning. Well, me and 16-year-old Ethan. But he might as well not be there. If, fact, he isn't really there because he prefers to go out in the car park and get high. I would complain about him, but he is the boss's son, so it wouldn't do much good anyway. Usually it is an easy shift except for last night. The events of last night make me want to never work the night shift again. It all started when I arrived at work at midnight, like I always do. It was 1:15 when the old black Cadillac first drove up to the drive-through speaker. The Cadillac looked quite used, and the black paint was beginning to fade and was now a more grey colour. All of the windows were very darkly tinted, and it was impossible to see into the car from the cameras. I heard a slight crackly sound through my headset and saw that the driver of this car had wound down his window just a crack, enough to speak through, but not enough to see into the car. He had then cleared his throat, which was the sound that I heard through the headset speaker. "Good evening. What would you like to order?" I asked through the microphone. A deep, croaky voice then replied, "I am after some chicken nuggets and a kid's meal," I heard the croaky voice say through the speaker in my ear. "I can get you some nuggets, sir, that's not a problem," I replied to the man. "But unfortunately, the kids' meal is only available between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m., so I cannot give you that at the moment." I thought I was polite with my answer, but the man driving the Cadillac obviously didn't agree because he quickly replied, "You won't serve me because I am not a kid," he said, with obvious contempt towards me. Before I could reply, the front wheels of the Cadillac began to spin and a little bit of smoke started spewing from the back tires. Suddenly the car lurched forward and I quickly saw the red of his tail lights. Then he was gone. He had driven out of the drive-through at great speed, obviously in anger. It wasn't until I saw the same black Cadillac pull up an hour later that I thought that something wasn't quite right here. "Hello, how can I help you tonight? What would you like to order?" I asked in the best customer service voice I could muster. There was silence for a moment, and then, through the camera, I saw the driver's side window begin to slide down. Once again, only a small crack, not big enough to see through. Then I heard the same deep and croaky voice speak. "I want to order the kids' meal," the voice said, or rather, it demanded. "I am very sorry, sir, but the kids' meal is not available at this time," I replied, still trying to sound as friendly as possible. "It's because I'm not a child, isn't it? That's why you won't serve me the kids' meal," the voice responded with a more aggressive tone. "I mean, technically you do have to be under 18 in order to purchase a kids' meal at this restaurant, or you need to be purchasing it for someone under 18. But that is not the issue tonight. It is because you are trying." I was cut off from speaking by the sound of the engine roaring and the tires screeching as the Cadillac suddenly took off in a cloud of smoke coming from the back tires. The next hour of my shift went like normal. I thought my night was returning to normal until I saw two bright headlights appear. I knew it was the black Cadillac once again. The car pulled up next to the speaker. The dark tinted window rolled down just an inch, and then I heard the same voice through my headset. "I have asked you time and time again for a kid's meal, and you will not provide. I know it is because you know I am not a kid, and so you will not serve me. Well, I guess what? I went and found a kid, so now you have to serve me." As soon as I heard the words "found a kid," I began to get incredibly nervous. What did he mean by that? I didn't know how to respond to this. I stood there in the small drive-through booth for a moment, not knowing what to do or say. Then my headset let out a small crackle, and once again, I heard the croaky voice. "Would you like to see?" the voice said just before it let out a small, raspy laugh. A laugh that I could tell meant nothing good. I could see the black Cadillac on the screen, and, on the passenger side, I could see that there was now someone sitting there. I recognized them instantly. It was Ethan. "See, I told you that I now had a kid, so will you serve me my kid's meal?" the voice suddenly spoke. I was about to try and run outside, but before I could even move and to try and help Ethan, the black Cadillac began to move and it disappeared from the drive-through and into the night. I quickly rang the police, and they soon sent a couple of officers out to assist me. I explained everything that had happened. The police wrote all of this down, and just after I had finished describing the night's events to one of the officers, the other one suddenly burst into the room into a panic. I do remember both officers rushing outside. I know that I followed them. I wanted to know what was happening. I do remember walking through the car park and then walking up to what both the officers were standing over. And I definitely remember the sight of Ethan's headless body lying on the ground. When I was working my way through college, I used to work nights at a gas station. I was pretty used to working nights, so this didn't bother me too much. The only uncomfortable thing was that this gas station was on the side of a hardly used highway in northern New York. That being said, my imagination would play tricks on me while I was working alone. The way the shifts worked was I was alone for the last 2 hours of my shift after the subway person had gone home. So for those 2 hours, I would try to pass the time by cleaning and listening to music. I didn't get many customers, but when I did, they were always a bit off. Most notably was a man that used to come in every night and try to buy a Subway sandwich. He would always wait until after Subway had closed for the night and would just stand there in front of the counter. I walk over and ask him what he would like, and he would say, "I'm hungry, I'd like a sandwich, please." I would tell him that Subway was closed and he wouldn't react to it at all. He would just stand there. He would wait there swaying back and forth for about 30 minutes. At that point, he would tell me to have a nice night and leave. I never once saw his car. He would just walk out the back and start walking down the highway. This wouldn't be odd if it was a rare occasion, but this happens every night that I work. I've tried asking the manager if anyone else had ever mentioned this guy, but she hadn't ever heard of the guy. I asked her if I could get another person to close with me, but she said we didn't have enough staff to cover that. Plus, there wasn't enough customers to justify the extra person. I tried telling her that this guy made me nervous, but she just told me to man up and try to deal with him the next time I saw him. That following day, I had to close again, and sure enough, I see the man walk in. He walks up to the Subway counter and waits for an employee. I ask him what he wants, and he says that he wants a sandwich. I decide that I've had enough of this guy coming in and asking for this, so I decide to just give the guy the sandwich he wants. He won't specify what he wants, so I just pick something random from the menu. I tell him it's gonna be $6 for the sandwich, but instead he grabs the bag and runs away. As I'm leaving that night, I see the man in the tree line waving at me. I'm freaked out by this, but I wave back, hoping that he's just homeless and was happy about the sandwich. I hop on my car and lock the doors. That was the last time I ever saw the man in the woods, and boy was I grateful for it. A few years later, as I was doing research on true crime stories, I found out that the store I worked at during the construction of it, one of the workers had been hurt when he was working alone. The store was supposed to open that following week, and there was a long weekend before that. This was before cell phones were a normal thing that people always had. The man's legs were broken after falling off the roof of the building. He laid there all weekend long and died due to exposure. When I said that this was in the middle of nowhere when I worked there, it was pretty much in the woods when it was built. This story didn't resonate with me much until I saw the picture of the guy. He looked a hell of a lot like the man that had plagued my nights at that gas station.